Psychic Type Magic Mike, and this is I Thought a Think number 2. Okay, so last week we talked about Michael's X-Men. If I was given reign over the X-Men franchise, how I would shape and form the franchise. This week we're going to continue that story, and to continue the story of the X-Men, we're going to work in one of the X-Men's most iconic villains, Magneto. So it's been about a year since the Purifiers incident, and the X-Men have been on the streets for that year, protecting mutants wherever they can. Anytime they see a hate crime erupting, anytime anyone is acting out in violence or anger towards mutants, the X-Men are there. And they're beginning to develop a reputation as the guardians of mutant kind. And through this reputation, Angel himself is building an even bigger reputation as the Angel of the X-Men. You see, Angel's actually the one that swoops in and saves you from certain death, impending danger. He's the face that you see, that moment where you realize, oh my gosh, everything's going to be okay. And as such, he's kind of starting to build up an ego because people are thanking him for saving their lives and they're calling him an angel, and it kind of gets to his head a little bit. You see, systemically at their core, the X-Men are a reactionary concept. They do not act until there has been an act of transgression already. Magneto shows up on the scene and he says, no, things should be different than that. Mutant kind should be able to take the world for its own, as its evolutionary cause. We're not just humans. We're the next step of humans. Because humans sit there underneath their united banner of humanity, and they go, no, he is different than me. And as such, they wage their wars. Mutanity stands here under this banner, this unified banner of difference. We can look at our mutant brothers, and even though we can look at them and see that they are different, we can recognize that they are us, because they were forged in the same fires of sorrow and pain that we were. So Magneto gathers a small band of followers. Avalanche, who's got the power to create tremors. Pyro, who has the power not to create fire, but to control flame, making it bigger and controlling it to however he sees fit. Blob, who's kind of like an immovable object. He's able to control his own body density to make himself immovable. And Toad's gotten kind of a bad rap over the years, but I see this Toad as kind of like the Brotherhood's tech guy. He's the guy who hid away from the world because he's green and looks like a toad. So he hid away in his basement and got really good at computers. And so he's got Magneto's ear to the internet and he knows what's going on, and he's able to get into the databases and figure out what the government is planning. Magneto and his Brotherhood are causing a whole bunch of mayhem in New York City, and the X-Men show up and they start to try to put a stop to Magneto and his Brotherhood, but Magneto goes and jeopardizes a whole bunch of human life to go and make his escape. And so the X-Men, being concerned with humans losing their lives, go and jump into the fracas to help them out. And as the X-Men are helping out the humans, the Brotherhood escape into the night. So the Brotherhood is still at large, and this is the first time the X-Men have ever come in contact with Magneto. This is the first, experience any of them have with the man. They have had no idea who he is up until this point. So Magneto has Toad hijack the broadcasts coming into New York City, and he releases his terrorist threats. Magneto states that he has spread a series of bombs throughout Manhattan, and he's going to blow the island up at midnight. And he's going to level it, and he's going to use the island to build a brand new world for mutants. And the bombs exploding over Manhattan at midnight will be the fireworks of the mutants' new Independence Day. The X-Men naturally can't let this happen. So they rush right over to Manhattan, and as they get there, the military, the government, everyone is just trying to evacuate as many people out of the island as humanly possible. And the X-Men show up, and the military are like, look, we don't need a bunch more of you freaks showing up and whipping everybody into more of a panic. Get gone, go home. And Cyclops steps up to the general and he's like, no, you need to listen to me. What we're dealing with right now is a mutant terrorist. We're dealing with a man stepping out onto the world stage and declaring that he's doing things for the right, for the betterment, and in the name of all mutants. Let us, right now, go in there and bring him to justice. Let us bring him to stand for his crimes so that the world can understand that this man does not represent all of mutant kind. So the general standing guard over the X-Men at the gate realizes that the absolute worst that can come of this is that the two mutie groups go in there and manage to take each other out, and that's no skin off his back. So he figures, alright, I'll let the people with weird abilities fight each other, and maybe we'll handle it all right then and there. So he lets the X-Men in to go and try and deal with Magneto. So Magneto and his Brotherhood are in the middle of Times Square, preaching about how this will be the new homeland of mutant kind, how this will be the new seat of power in the new world order. Basically flaunting his power, begging for the world to come at him. And this is exactly where the X-Men head to. As the X-Men are making their way over there, they encounter Avalanche, one of Magneto's right-hand men. And Avalanche is shaking the ground up, he's making buildings fall, and the X-Men confront him. They shout out, and Avalanche looks over, and he starts making the ground almost open up beneath the X-Men. And Angel realizes, I don't care about earthquakes, and he starts flying at Avalanche. Avalanche sees what's happening, and makes a break for a side alley off of Times Square. So Avalanche is booking it down this alley, and Warren is following him, thinking that he's got the upper hand at this point, only to realize far too late that it's a trap, and Pyro has been laying in wait for him. Seemingly out of nowhere, Pyro creates an inferno that just burns all of the feathers off of Warren's wings and leaves them kind of crippled and broken. He has crippled an X-Man. The rest of the X-Men aren't too far behind, and when they see what's happened to Warren, they are aghast. They're horrified as to what has just happened. Jean sits and she's like, I will take Warren to safety. I'll help him get medical attention. You guys need to put a stop to this now. Magneto needs to be stopped. Scott, Bobby, and Hank roll up on Times Square, and they are mad. But because they're mad, they're not thinking, and they're not acting as a cohesive unit. They're just trying to hurt the man who's responsible for hurting their friend. It's all kind of frantic fighting. It's not the team fighting that we've seen before because they're broken and they're very much working off of emotion right now. Everyone is angry, everyone is hurt, and everything that they throw at Magneto just seems to be bouncing off of him. You see, Magneto has this armor made out of this really cool mineral called adamantium, which kind of allows him to shrug off all kinds of weird energy attacks, including, I don't know, say, telepathic ones? Once Professor Xavier realizes that Magneto is essentially an empty space in the world on the battlefield, he figures out what's going on, and he manages to coordinate his X-Men into forming a unified front of attack against Magneto. Cyclops starts with a full-on frontal attack, just blasting everything he's got at Magneto, while Bobby Drake is, flying around on his ice slides, just making as many distractions as he can. And this is all to draw Magneto's focus onto the two of them. You see, Hank McCoy manages to sneak around to behind Magneto, and he grabs the helmet and with one giant throw actually manages to throw Magneto out of his helmet. This gives Xavier the opening he's been looking for, and he worms his way into Magneto's mind and makes him kind of relive those moments of horror and pain and anguish, and that gives the X-Men enough time to get in and subdue Magneto. By all means, this should be a victory for the X-Men. They've beaten the bad guy. They've stopped the terrorist who's looking to level Manhattan. But Warren's still become a broken man out of this. One of their teammates has kind of fallen from grace. He originally started as Warren Worthington III, who is identified kind of as his person and who he was because of his family. And that was taken from him when wings sprouted out of his back and he became a mutant. But he found a new identity as the Angel of the X-Men, and that was taken from him again. The one thing that made him free, that made him who he is. And so Warren doesn't know who he is anymore. He's kind of in a dark place and lost and adrift in the world. And this is the note that we leave the X-Men on. Yeah, the Brotherhood has come to be tried for their crimes. They've come to answer for what they've done. But one of their own has been hurt by the events, and he may never recover. So yeah, we kind of end on a somber note there. A little tinge of darkness, but that just lines things up for things to get better for our heroes in the third movie. With that being said, next week I may not do the third part of the Psychic Type Magic Mike X-Men trilogy. We'll see where things take us, but we might do something a little bit different next week. We'll see. Until then, do what you do when you do what you do. I'm Psychic Type Magic Mike.